Hello, so I'm going to do a video today talking about German style gas masks. Now there's probably a proper name for these, but this video is more just generally talking about the sort of design style of them, because you're probably familiar with masks like this, and as far as I'm aware the GM30 is kind of the first one that did this. Now this is a GM38, the better mask that replaced the GM30. I suppose the GM17 kind of looks like this. But the idea of these masks is that you've basically got a filter port in the front there, you've got the exhale valve directly behind, below it, and it's kind of got this sort of snout look to it there. Normally a 5-strap mask, 2 straps on the side, on each side, and then 1 strap on the top. So here's the Z56, and as you can see, same general design choice. Eyes are in the same place, overall profile is the same. But yeah, the Germans use masks like this, so GM30 and the GM38, this one's made by BMW. After World War II there was the GM54, which is almost like a GM30 again. I've got one, but mine's pretty mummified. And the Hungarians also made a few masks like this in the Cold War. And there's probably a lot more masks you can look up that random countries used at random periods or, did under license. But how good are these masks, especially for the time when they first came out? So something like this for the 1930s isn't too bad. It's kind of got a bit of a peripheral seal on this mask. Now, apologies, I know there's newspaper in there, but that's just so the mask keeps its shape. So if you see that there is a bit of a peripheral seal on this mask, so it doesn't make an awful face shape. They're not the most comfortable things in the world, but they're not awful. Compared to the British gas masks of World War II, until the light anti-gas respirator came around, they're probably a lot more modernised than the British masks of World War II, if you think of like the Mark IV or Mark V GSR. But if the Mark IV or Mark V GSR actually had a filter port where you could screw the filter in directly underneath it, they might be a bit better, it's hard to say. But there's not too much of a difference between them. These masks are quite iconic, because obviously Germany in World War II, if you watch German World War II movies, they always have masks like this on, even if they're not the proper historical masks. They pick ones that generally look close enough to them. So, they're not so bad. Obviously, by modern standards, they're pretty horrible in terms of comfort and everything else, because if you look at modern respirators, I've probably got one behind me somewhere. This isn't the most modern one, but there's a C4 behind me, Canadian C4. If you look at the way this attaches to your face and everything, in general, it's got a much better face mould and everything, for, making a good mask. But you can see how something like this is mile heads or something like this, but they're massively time period differently apart. But anyway, these masks aren't awful, but they're certainly not brilliant. The rubberized ones are certainly better than the ones made from like the cloth materials that they then put a bit of rubber on. So I suppose they're truly the rubberized ones, but what I mean is the pure rubber ones are certainly better than the ones where they got a bit of canvas, soaked it in rubber, so you had a flexible sort of rubber protection thing and did that. How well all these work for aiming rifles and that, I don't know, I've never tried it. The Israeli 4A1s are based on the Draeger Simplex, which is still this kind of general design shape, and the Israeli civilian masks are actually pretty alright for what they are. So I suppose if you modernise them into like the 4A1 style design, they're not too bad. Obviously masks have come a long way since. But yeah, so this video wasn't all that informative really, but it was just one that somebody sort of suggested could I do a video on. What are my thoughts on these masks? For the 1930s, they're certainly not bad. I'm sure if you're interested, you can go down the rabbit hole of looking up every sort of mask that has this sort of design to it. If they're made out of good rubbers, they're actually alright, but, there are much better mask designs out now, because I think the thing a lot of people forget is as time goes on, there generally becomes better design trends in masks, where they realise how to make components to be a lot more comfortable and a lot tougher. So, even if you had an old mask like this that was still in good enough condition that it worked, it wouldn't work anywhere near as well as a modern mask, because, the rubber composites both aren't as comfortable or like as chemical resistant and stuff like that. But, these are what they are. If I had to say what my favourite mask of World War II is, it's probably, funnily enough, the Finnish civilian mask, which is kind of a bit like the German civilian masks, but made to a better standard. I'm trying to remember what it's called now. Is it the Type 39? Something like that. It's called the Finnish civilian mask. But that's a really nice mask when it was designed, in terms of it takes 40mm filters, and mine still works in terms of pressure testing. But yeah, these are what they are. I don't think they're particularly awful, but they're not particularly amazing either, Don't be fooled by some of these Weeaboo or whatever they call them, going, oh, this is the best mask ever, the German engineering of this mask is so good. Like, not really. But, they're no worse or better than a lot of the British masks of the time period. The Americans probably had the best masks of World War II, I'd say, thinking of it objectively, in terms of overall designs and things. But yeah, these German masks are what they are. They're very iconic. They're not amazing, but they're not crap either, They are what they are. So there you go. If you're interested in German-style masks, yeah, they're alright. They're not awful, but, not much to say. It's perfectly serviceable for when they were made. Would have worked as a perfectly fine gas mask during World War II. But, they aren't the best masks ever, which, probably applies to most masks built. But there you go.